Hey, Discernment listeners, a new batch of episodes just came out the other day, 2 days ago, actually. I'm watching this on Sunday. And so let's get into it. Love is Blind, Season 4, second batch of episodes. By the way, if you ever want to contact me, the best way to do so is through Patreon by becoming a patron of the podcast. I don't know, it just makes sense that I would be more communicative with the patrons. And also go to the website and click on the contact button and email me through there. And let's watch.
Bliss, I really do love you.
Are you breaking up with me?
I can't marry you.
Okay, so I actually thought I'd watch the recap. Yeah, I forgot how much Zach cried in that moment. Makes sense. Of course he's crying because it's rough. One, you feel bad. Two, it's a loss. This, of course, is building up to the reveal in this episode as to how things go. I suspect Bliss is going to be like, too little, too late. I mean, you just imagine the amount of time that Bliss has spent upset about being broken up with.
Because it didn't start physically. This is setting the tone for the rest of our lives. And it's good. I want to cherish this forever.
I was literally all in with you.
Like, I still care about you.
Would you have rather been with her?
No, I'm right where I need to be.
Then let it go. Let it f***ing go.
I don't know if I said this originally when I was watching this, but the way that Kwame talks to Chelsea in this conversation, if you really think about the word choices he's using and the vibe that he has, it could very well be that he's out of the relationship or a significant part of him is out of the relationship, but he doesn't want to break up because of he wants to stay on the show or he is unsure, so he wants to hedge his bets or something. Think about how Bartise was talking to Nancy. In retrospect, when you see the things that Bartise was saying, one argument maybe that he would make is, look, I never lied to her. I never said flat out that I was 100% absolutely going to spend the rest of my life with her. I said things like what he just said, which is, I'm 100% where I want to be. Well, what does that mean? And of course, if you're Chelsea and you're in love and you're looking for something to hold on to, then you will hold on to that and interpret it in the way that you want to. Think of other people on these shows, like Darcy will do that. A lot of people will. We will do this. When we want to believe in something, when we need to believe something, we'll give ourselves any excuse to believe something in the face of evidence to the contrary. And it is something to think about for yourself. You might recognize it more in your friends when they seem to be deluding themselves about a bad relationship or a bad job or something. But, we can apply it to ourselves. You can think for yourselves right now. Is there something that you're in denial of? Some relationship or job or family situation or life situation, maybe even health. Sometimes people will go in denial about their own health. Is there something, so let's just all think about it. Pause the video if you want to. Think about 3 things and write them down that you might be in denial of. And you don't have to go into depth on it, of course, because we have denial as a defense for a reason. The Freud and Anna Freud and the psychoanalysts back in the day developed a number of defense mechanisms. And the way they framed it was that when we have psychological pain or discomfort, we have to find a way to defend ourselves against that. We have a number of defense mechanisms to do that. Some defense mechanisms are very pathological, some are mildly pathological, and some are actually helpful. Some defense mechanisms actually help us. For example, with sublimation, say you really have a lot of anger from your past, or I don't know, you just have a lot of aggression and anger, and you want to be violent with people that you don't like, or you're on the road and someone cuts you off, you have an impulse to run them off the road. And you sublimate it, you point that energy in a different direction towards video games or boxing or working out or art. And in this instance, it's a defense. You're defending yourself because you don't want to act out on that impulse because it could really harm other people, you. It also would challenge your idea of yourself. You might not think of yourself as a violent, aggressive person. So all of that points to you need to have some way of directing your energy away from your natural impulse, so to speak. And so there are positive defenses. But one of our defenses that we use a lot, and in a lot of defenses, there's an element of denial, but sometimes we just call it denial in and of itself. But anyway, I'm going to do a whole deep dive at some point on defenses. Point is, 3 things. So is it your relationship? Is it worse than you are acknowledging? Is there something just about your partner whom you love and you absolutely want to spend the rest of your life with your partner, but there's something about them that is not so pleasant and you are going into denial about it? Is there something about yourself, personality trait, an impulse that you have that you sometimes acknowledge, but is really hard to deal with, really hard to acknowledge because it's shameful, or I don't know. We all have shame. We all have things that we legitimately have done that would legitimately cause shame. We got overly angry. We stole from someone, or I don't know, whatever. So think about aspects of your job, aspects of your boss, aspects of your career, aspects of your living situation, aspects of your children. There could be things about your kids that you're in denial of. And like I said, health. Is there some pain or high blood pressure or a blood test that came up a little interesting? Have you not been to the physician? Have you not been to the dentist for a while? And of course, there's access and privilege involved in this. But, we're all in denial. So it makes me wonder about with Chelsea, is she going into denial because there's a lot of indication that Kwame isn't really into her, or there's at least a question mark there and some worry. And for Chelsea, she is, and maybe we'll find out, right, is actually just choosing to ignore the signals. We don't know. I guess we'll find out.
I'm in my emotions. I'm thinking about home.
Please bring me back to that shit, man.
Yeah, with Jackie, it was rough to watch. And I don't know what's going on in her life. She seems to be crying from a place of long-term difficulties and trauma. I don't know what that trauma entails. Obviously, the only thing we've heard from her is that she has to take care of her parents or her family or something, which absolutely can be a major difficulty and a lot of stress. If you have a terminally ill parent, or a parent that's in a lot of discomfort, or a parent that is struggling through the health care system, yeah, it can be a lot of stress. I don't know. There's just a lot of questions about what's going on with Jackie. It could just be regular stress, but it doesn't look like it. So, and then I think about how with Jackie, when she revealed to Marshall, look, there's been this other guy and I haven't told you and I feel bad about it. And Marshall was like, oh, okay, well, kind of makes me a little sad to hear that you have feelings for someone else. And then he got upset at the other guy. Now, it could have been a by proxy aggression, anger talk that he was having. Marshall, he wasn't particularly aggressive, but he was upset. And Jackie could legitimately interpret that upsetness at that other guy as really what he means. Marshall is that he's upset at Jackie. At the very least, Jackie seemed to decompensate pretty quickly. She put the blanket over her head. She became overwhelmed with emotion and feelings and had to leave the room. I mean, that's saying something to not be able to respond in that moment, to not be able to have a conversation. I don't know exactly what that means, but I think it points to a lot of difficulty maybe throughout her life. I don't know though. It's just speculative, of course.
Isn't mine just mirrors?
Irina hates her man. I know it.
Oh my God, you're the worst.
I'm
Oh, that's interesting. I don't think they showed this scene originally. Yeah, they've got to have so much footage that they left on the editing floor. And that's interesting. So he was trying to kiss her and she was pulling away. Yeah. It's hard to know what that means. Does that mean that he believed that she would kiss him from previous experiences? I mean, certainly a lot of the things that we saw, that was not the case. Or because he's in public, he's thinking, well, maybe she'll finally kiss me. It makes sense that he would want to have affection with his fiancée, someone that they both fell in love with each other in the pods just days earlier than this. So, but yeah, I'm just really glad that they pulled the plug, that he pulled the plug. She wasn't ready to pull the plug, but he did, right? She gave him a lot of signals, but I'm just really glad that he took that step. And I hope this is a trend, that more people on this show will do that. It just makes sense. And I find it so much more satisfying to watch, because if we were going to have to sit through another 7 episodes of them acting like they're in a relationship, it's hard to watch. And I'm pretty sure that happened with a lot of past couples. Maybe a third of the couples we've watched, maybe less, maybe like a fourth of the couples that we watched.
Oh, Chinese right away.
I feel my feet lift off the ground.
Okay, so just a little Seattle tour. That's the waterfront, and you can see the clouds. You can see a little bit of sky. That's a little unusual. And they built a Ferris wheel because, of course, every city has to have a Ferris wheel. It's a nice Ferris wheel. It's pretty big, but I don't know. It kind of ruins the skyline to me a little bit. It's one of the bridges across Lake Washington from Seattle to Bellevue. I believe it's a floating bridge. It's a concrete bridge that floats. On the left, you can see kind of a cove, and that's where super rich people live. Of course, you have where the Seahawks play and where the Mariners play. You're kind of downtown looking west to the Puget Sound. You can see a ferry there, and you can see the Cascade Mountains. And of course, you have to have the shot from Queen Anne Hill. You see the Space Needle, and then downtown, and again, the Sound, Puget Sound right there where the ferries go across. And I used to live just a couple blocks from the Space Needle because the university that I work at is downtown. It's been in my life, not my lifetime, but in my time at Antioch University for the past almost 30 years. It's always been downtown, Belltown actually specifically. And so I had a place that was across the street from the university, very convenient to just walk across the street and go to work. And I'd come home and take a nap and go back.
Welcome to the Emerald City.
It's a cheesy thing to do. It's a very touristy thing to do, to go up to the viewing deck and then also to the observation deck and then also to go to the restaurant. The restaurant, it rotates very slowly. The food isn't that great. It's notorious for having not so great food, but you're not going there for the food.
5 couples got engaged and fell in love sight unseen, although one of those relationships seems to not have worked out.
If in some crazy life, weeks from now, Zach is in my mind and I can't stop thinking about him, like I'm gonna reach out and I'm gonna do something about it. Maybe it will be too late, maybe he already moved on, but I couldn't get over the uncomfortable feeling I felt with him physically.
Yeah, I've been wondering as to what that was for Irina, because of course, if it's a chemistry thing, then it's a chemistry thing. There's nothing you can do. And by chemistry, we could mean literal chemistry, like pheromones and this sort of stuff. But it could also just be the first impression you have on someone or the circumstance. And as a part of that, I think Irina has some issues of, I don't know what to say. I've been using the term immaturity, but it's such a loaded term these days, or maybe it has been for a long time. I mean, when I was in middle school, one of the biggest insults that we would lay on each other was to call each other immature, or we would shorten it to Imma. Did anyone else do that? We'd be like, oh my God, you're so Imma. This is 1983 or something. And it was a huge insult because I think in middle school, early high school, you're very concerned with looking cool, looking like an adult, and not, for example, playing tag at lunch or something. Oh my God, so Imma. And so it was a huge insult. And so when I use the term, though, it's not intended to be insulting. It's intended to be just a regular part of life. We all have immaturities. We all have different markers of development in that way. And what is immature to begin with? But I'm just going to take a guess and say that Irina in 10, 20, 30 years will look back at herself on this show and think, oh my God, I was just a young kid. Just imagine for yourself. In fact, I will say that I had a dream last night that I actually spent a fair amount of time this morning trying to analyze because I could not figure out why I had the dream, and let me analyze it in front of you. It's really boring to hear other people's dreams, but in a nutshell, I had a dream that I was rebelling against my mom like I was a teenager or a young adult. She was trying to help me or something. She was trying to control my life, and my mom is not like that, especially in the past 30 years since I've been an adult. She's a very, very nice person. I had a wonderful relationship with her throughout my life. My parents were very flexible. They weren't stern if anything, they were too permissive. So that's why it took me a while to figure out what was going on there, because it was pretty intense, the amount of anger that I had towards my mom. Now, we could analyze it for a long time, but the thing that I landed on, because I've been watching this show nonstop for the past week, is I started to wonder if it had to do with Irina and Micah, because their situation is, in my mind, it possesses an archetype of rebellion, of immaturity, of lack of nuance. That's the position I was in. When I woke up, I felt like, oh, I was pretty unreasonable. I sided with my mom, kind of, when I woke up. I was like, my mom was kind of right, and I was being a complete dick in that moment. Like, what? But when I was a teenager, particularly when I was younger, there was a period of time, like 12, 13. My parents to this day will say that I was the nicest kid, but I know that I wasn't like as nice as I was later. Let's just put it that way. You know, I was insecure. I didn't know how to move in the world. I worried about people looking at me all the time. But I wanted some attention. I wanted to be seen as competent and cool. But when I made a mistake, 13. And so I surmised, and who knows, and there's no science to this to lock it down, but it does stand to reason that there's a part of me that is mulling over or resonating with what's happening with Micah and Irina, at least the way that I see them. And it's possible, one perspective, that my unconscious was actually trying to help me to see Irina and Micah. It is a thing that I want to do. I have a drive to understand people, relate to them. A big part of being able to understand truly others is to relate to them, is to find a kernel of similarity, something that you can hold on to that bonds you with someone else. And it is a technique for all therapists that they need to be utilizing in my book all the time. And also just to have good relationships with other people, to especially those that are close to you that you're having conflict with, but really anybody. And so I think that, one perspective, and of course there's no way to prove this, but I imagine there's a part of me that's saying, and that's the feeling I had, is when I woke up, I thought, oh, I feel like I understand Irina and Micah better. I mean, how bizarre is it that I'm having dreams, subconscious dreams related to Micah and Irina? But the dream gave me an opportunity to, for a time, have a fantasy that I was that young, immature person, a very black and white person. That's the feeling I had when I woke up. I just had a lot of black and whiteness to the way I saw the world. When my mom, or the mom archetype, was telling me to do something, I felt right. I felt righteous. I felt complete. I felt completely justified in not only rejecting, but also being very hurtful and very rejecting, very like, get out of my life, that kind of thing. Just no nuance, no recognition of the relationship or the bigger picture. Or maybe my mom was a little wrong in my dream, but it didn't call for that kind of act. Now, of course, Irina and Micah, they're not rebelling against that kind of thing, but it does make me wonder about where they're at in life. The amount of justification that I think they individually feel about their behavior, the way they laugh, the way that they will dismiss, the lack of care. I mean, Micah has been full-on flirting with Kwame without thinking about how it affects Paul, right? It'd be fine if she wants to see what happens with Kwame, but she should probably break up with Paul, right? And of course, Irina's behavior towards everyone, towards Zach for Irina, she just wasn't feeling it, and that's, of course, totally normal. But I just wonder if there's something like that going on, something that the two of them, maybe even soon after this show, but I'm guessing in 10 years they'll look back and go like, oh, yeah, I was young, I was confused, I had bad priorities, I didn't understand the landscape, was still kind of in this mindset of live one day at a time, don't think about the long-term consequences of my behavior. And it wasn't just on the show, there was a lot of behaviors that I was engaging in at the time. I needed to do it, and it would have been fine if I wasn't on a reality TV show, but I was on a reality TV show. Now everyone knows me for the way I was when I was 25. I mean, I just think about if I went on one of these shows when I was 25, I mean, my goodness.
She also decided to take a nap during a date. Let's just go ahead and clear that out.
It was really bad. It was actually really bad. Her name on my phone is Miss Sleeping Beauty because she is a phenomenal sleeper.
Yeah, she will nap anywhere and everywhere. I think
she's fallen asleep on us, so you're not boring or anything. Do not take it personal.
Okay, yeah, I wondered about that. It had that look to it, that Tiffany is the sort of person that if she's laying down and she's cozy and she's had a couple of drinks and it's late at night and there's no major stimulation happening, his soft voice, there's a lot of coziness to it, that she's just going to fall asleep. And that's what happened. That's what it looked like. So this is good that he's being reassured of.
But it'll last. And it looks good.
It better. Bougie breath.
You are like this creative too. Like, I think you have very good style and very good taste.
I don't know, but I wonder if so I haven't shown all the scenes, but Tiffany a few times has commented about how he's bougie. And I don't know if she's just making jokes and it's just a conversation starter, but I wonder if for her it makes her insecure about something. She's worried that he will judge her because she's not bougie, or maybe she's worried that when they mix their finances, he'll spend money on things that she doesn't agree upon. I don't know. I'm just hearing a little bit. Sometimes we can hear our humor or hear other people's humor about us and pick out the more serious theme that they might be trying to communicate. Not always, but it is a passive way of trying to communicate something, right? I don't know if I'm just reading into it, though.
I just want to make sure it's within the budget I feel comfortable with spending. Here's my thing.
Well, there you go. She's being more direct, which is, yeah, that's what I was wondering, if that's where she was coming from.
In terms of like our bills, like it doesn't have to be down the middle for me. I'd be fine with saying, well, I'll get 75% of this, or 60 or 60
yeah.
40.
Yeah.
Whatever. If we, said that there's a few bills.
So it's good. They're having a conversation and they're negotiating it, trying to get it out in the open. Very healthy. I think they both have enough funds to be more flexible in this way. The fact that he could offer to pay most of the bills means that there's not so much of a worry for him about that. If money was tight, it would raise the anxiety, right? But it's great that they're having this conversation.
Those are certain bills, like, I don't know if it's like a rent or a mortgage or something like that, that we wanted to pay together to avoid the I pay, then you pay me back, or you pay, then I pay you back. That feels like kind of a roommate situation. Like,
exactly.
I pay you, then I'm looking at you like, hey, babe, like, when you gonna pay me my half?
It depends. There are different ways of doing this. People will sometimes look at that. If a couple were doing that, say one person paid the mortgage and then the person who paid the mortgage says, okay, you need to pay me half of the mortgage or whatever the agreement is. And people will look at that because it's not traditional. The traditional model was in a heterosexual relationship, the man made all the money and he paid all the bills and the wife had no idea what was happening. Or maybe the wife paid the bills, but she didn't really have any power over it. And so the further we get away from that model, the more unromantic or unloving or problematic it feels to us. And when you have two people that are paying the bills, sometimes it's just easier to do that. It's more convenient, right? Instead of combining your funds into one bank account or having a shared bank account or sending in two checks for the mortgage, one person pays, the other person pays the other person. So it's fine. There's a lot of silliness around this. Similar to when people will say that they don't live together. They're married and they don't live together, or they're married and they don't sleep in the same bed or something like this. And they will think like, well, that's unromantic. That doesn't seem very healthy. And it's like, no, it doesn't matter. It's a choice that people make. If it's a problem and someone's like, I don't like sleeping alone, I would rather sleep with my partner, but she doesn't want to sleep with me, okay. But if two people agree to sleep apart, or two people agree to live apart, or two people agree that that's how they want to do the finances, it's fine. There's no problem in that. And it doesn't make it like a business partnership. It's just the pragmatics of the situation.
You better send me that memo, real
Exactly. Like, I don't want to be sending Venmo requests to my wife or
Now, some of you might have had experiences where someone nickeled and dimed you or pressured you or had a lot of tension with you around these kinds of things about Venmoing or whatever, and you have negative associations with it, not because of it in all likelihood, but because of the way it was played out between the people. If everyone agrees and everyone's communicating well and honest with each other, and they have arrangements like this, again, there's nothing wrong with it. And the reason why I want to point this out is because there's a large umbrella of a lot of things that are considered to be wrong, like the other things I was mentioning, that people will shame themselves for, or they will avoid, even though they both want to do that, because they are worried about being judged. It's similar to people not wanting to have kids. There will be people, they will literally shame themselves or have kids when they don't really know if they want to have kids because they feel like that's the way they're supposed to live, particularly women, right? So there's a lot of things under this umbrella that we just need to look at logically and conclude, actually, no, there's nothing wrong with people making that choice. Why are we judging that?
mortgage payments. That does not sound like something I want to do. Real quick side note, you are burning up this kitchen.
Oh, well, because,
God, that was scary. I was like, that's, huh. It's one of the scariest things I've ever seen on reality TV. All right, well, let's do some self-affirmations. How about that? In the Stuart Smalley, was that his name on Saturday Night Live? Gosh darn it, you're good enough, or gosh darn it, people like you, or something. Anyway, let's do that. Okay, so take a deep breath, and then close your eyes if you want to or not, and think about your needs. Where are you today? Who are you? What are you feeling? Is there any discomfort? Is there any joy? Is there any longings? Is there any anger? Is there any sadness? Is there any happiness? Is there someone you want to reach out to? Is there an emotion that you want to express to someone? Is there someone that you want to connect with? Do you need a hug? Do you need a break? Do you need to go to the bathroom? Do you need to get warmer or colder? Do you need to eat? Do you need to drink? Do you need to lay down? Do you need to take your medication? Take note of that. Do you need to just sit? Do you need to not listen to me say this anymore? Whatever it is, take note of that. You don't necessarily have to do anything about it. That's sometimes the worry, that somehow if we recognize our needs, that means we need to do something about it, which can scare us sometimes, because sometimes we don't know if we can actually succeed in that way. So release yourself from actually having to act on it. Obviously, you could act on what emerges for you, but you don't have to. So, because sometimes if you want to leave a relationship or a job, even just acknowledging it can be very scary, because there's a lot of consequences, a lot of implications. But without acknowledging it, you don't know where you're at. And of course, the more you suppress, the more problem you have. Also, sometimes wanting to leave a marriage or a job or a life or a city or something is really a result of not noticing your needs and acting on it. I talk with lots of people about their marriages that aren't going well, and at first they're like, yeah, I need to divorce, and of course I don't have any skin in the game, so I will say, yeah, whatever you want to do. But as we explore it, they discover, well, actually, it's not that I want to leave the marriage, it's that I want to change the marriage, and I didn't have any optimism about actually being able to do that because I never had help with it before. So anyway, think about what you need right now. Who are you? Where are you? Take note of your surroundings. Be here and now. Take care of yourself, because you deserve it. You really, really do.